fuck are we talking about today?
I don't know.
Me neither.
Because I totally forgot we were recording today, so I didn't get anything ready.
Oh, well, that's nice that I'm that important to you in your life that you just forget.
Well, I did make 5 TikToks today, so that took up all of my headspace.
That sounds like something crazy people do.
Doesn't it?
Because it's only 3 p.m. your time. Like you've made a TikTok for probably every waking hour.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, I've got to talk about RFK Jr.
Yeah, okay, so let me ask you a question. When you do people get pissy with you because they're like, you're a Brit, stay out of American politics? Do you ever get that?
I had one person say that, and he was Irish, and he actually, it was really funny. I have to read you the fucking comment. It was hilarious. So it was some Irish bloke. Like, Americans never mind. Like, they really don't mind me talking about stuff like that.
That's interesting, because I've been told as a Canadian I should keep my nose out of it.
I don't know why. I think it's maybe they can tell that I'm interested in their politics and I enjoy it and all that stuff, and I know what I'm talking about. Whereas, like, and maybe it's also what I'm saying as well.
So you just like low key said that I don't know what I'm talking about.
Guess I accidentally did, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well. But also, there's something about the British accent, I guess, as well, isn't there, compared to the Canadian?
Does he sound push? Maybe if I've going. No, that's too
that's London. No, that was London.
Please, sir, can I have some more?
So this twat face from Ireland says, "Tell you what, seeing that you're English, worry about your own shitty government and leave American politics to them and go get your 6th booster shot." So I replied to him, "So many assumptions you're making there and none of them relating to the topic. Nice try." This is the funny thing I find with this Irish guy's thing there, right? Is that he was wrong about everything. He said, "Now, seeing that you're English, well, I'm actually Welsh, okay?
Is your accent distinctively Welsh, though? Or is it more
No, I'm English, but it's just that people just make the assumption, don't they? I mean, it's a fair assumption to make, but it's just funny how when people make assumptions about me, when I make my content, they're always wrong. So, like, I'm not English, I'm Welsh. The reason why this matters with RFK Jr. is because their politics ends up affecting our politics. The things that they do, our government try to do too, all right? And then go get your 6th booster shot. I haven't had a single booster shot, so go fuck yourself. I won't take it. I
actually kind of regret taking my booster shot because I don't even know what it is now, but like, I think it's called a fibroid or fibrosis, whatever it is. The area of the booster, like a week after it, has never, not that it's never healed, but like it's limited my range of motion, which apparently is a pretty common side effect of some of the boosters, is that like I've got this like constant pain right in the injection area. It is shit because it limits my range of motion and I can't.
Well, one of the biggest scandals coming out of this stuff with these boosters is that the CDC aren't correctly recording adverse events. So you could go and tell them, like whoever gave you that booster, they should be recording that as an adverse event. And then that gets uploaded to the system so that everybody can look at what are the adverse events and how frequent are they. And they're not doing it properly.
And I wouldn't even have thought to record, like to communicate that with anybody. And it's not just me. Like I remember being out with my girlfriends and one of them went to take her coat off and she was like, "Oh, my fucking arm." And then we compared notes and it was the exact same thing.
The boosters have been an absolute bloody scandal. I got the 1st and 2nd shot, but I did that because I didn't want to off my partner's father, basically, because he's an old man. And so
that's why I got the booster, because of my mom.
Yeah, and then so I got the normal vaccinations at the right time to suit them, not me, because I'm young. I've already got my bad health problems. Don't want to risk getting any more. And but I thought, okay, but on like weighing everything up with the cost benefit ratio, my partner had to go down to see her dad, and so about 4 weeks before she was going to go down and see him, I got my vaccine shots, and I did that. And then about a year later, I did it with the 2nd vaccine, because it's just because I was shielding him, unless I thought it was worth doing it. But when they're like whacking the vaccine into kids, so we don't know the long-term effects of it. They're giving it to people at exactly the wrong times. Like they were giving the vaccine to people who had just been hospitalized for COVID, and they're on ventilators or whatever, and then they come out of hospital and they were like, oh, here's your vaccine now. It's like, that's exactly the wrong time to give it to them, because they've got the autoimmune system,
wait
antibodies.
But you gotta wait, what is it, 6 months until? Is that what they've said last?
Yeah.
I don't know. I got the boosters because of my mom, but now like my arm always hurts.
Yeah, exactly. Probably wasn't worth it.
And I think I read somewhere that some of the side effects that they've experienced is depression, or like just like, and so like people who have already were dealing with depression probably would have wanted to have known that.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, it was just going to make everything worse.
Exactly. The vaccine certainly didn't make it any easier. It didn't improve the situation. Not at all.
Certainly not.
And it's the first vaccine of that type ever made, so we didn't know. And another big scandal from it is that it had the emergency use authorization from the FDA, and that is only ever to be used if there is no other treatment available. But ivermectin, everything else, like vitamins, sunlight, these are all alternative treatments that work.
Well, and also that's probably a good place to say that we're not anti-vaxxers, and we're not, we took it, we did it, we're not anti-vaxxers. It's just had I known this was going to be that I'd have my arm fucked for a year and a half and counting, that I probably would have been like, I'll just see my mom outside. Because we would have had options.
Because the difference between this and other vaccines is that other vaccines have decades of research behind them, and it's very well known what the pros and cons of those vaccines are.
I think the way they sold it, the way I heard it sold anyway, was that it was kind of like, we already know all the long-term effects of these other vaccines, and all these other vaccines were used to create this vaccine. So ipso facto, it would probably be the same.
Which is all bollocks.
They worded it in a way that was kind of like, I guess that makes sense. Okay.
There's another thing that's ridiculous, right? Is that because you weren't allowed to say anything bad at all about the vaccine at the time. You weren't allowed to say anything bad, even though it was perfectly legit and normal science to critique it, right? So with the mRNA vaccine, there's something about it, and it's called cytotoxic. Okay, so the vaccine is cytotoxic. And then the press got hold of that and they're going, no, it's not toxic. It's anti-vaxxers telling you that. And it's like, no, what cytotoxic means? Toxic means harmful and damaging, and cyto to do with cells. And so when you get injected with it, it can affect the cells around that and damage the cells, right? Yeah. So it is cytotoxic. It doesn't mean that it's going to kill you. It doesn't mean it's going to maim you, but it does mean it's going to affect the cells and damage them.
And I think that's the thing of people not understanding what it is they're fucking talking about. But also when they hear the word toxic, so they just assume they know what that means. But the prefix is quite important in that instance. And it goes with everything. People just, like you talked about, nobody can talk shit about the vaccine, but we're seeing that nobody can talk shit about anything ever anymore at all without being considered some sort of phobe or anti something, where it's like, no, you can critique something and still be for it. I can talk shit about my job, but still go to work. Because
you could still talk shit about men and still be married to one.
Right. I mean, that's kind of my bread and butter.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you hate men. It just means that there are aspects of men that need improving in general.
Exactly. Not everything is perfect. I miss the days when we had gray areas. Seems like now everything is black and white.
There's a few things I blame on that. Number one is probably Hollywood. Number two is mainstream media, particularly the United States. And number three would be our politicians, mainly the American politicians. There's a
lot of fear mongering. Like I wish we could go back to the days where we didn't have access to news 24 hours a day, because then what you saw in that news, like if you only had an hour of news, you saw the most impactful, important news stories, the shit that counted. But when you got to fill 24 hours of news time, every little thing gets made out to be something dramatic, because you got to catch people's eyes and attention. And then our Toronto news they put out, I follow their Instagram feed, and I saw this big, like, splashy breaking news. And it was like, breaking news, Blake Lively has an alcohol brand. I was like, what, are we playing that fast and loose? I mean, that's not the right, I forget what the example was, but like, I would say 9 times out of 10 when I see breaking news, I'm like, this is not, it's not breaking. It's barely even news.
Yeah. Barely
but
news.
You gotta, but people are giving Blake Lively shit because she has an alcohol brand and she doesn't drink. people are getting super mad about her. It's like, but like the majority of women's clothing designers are men. They're not wearing them. So that's
exactly.
What's the problem? What's the problem?
Yeah, I don't see the problem with that. It probably makes you got better business sense if you can make money off of something you don't yourself partake in. I mean,
and apparently there's alcohol and non-alcoholic versions of it. So
there we go.
Yeah. But it's breaking news. That wasn't actually a breaking news story, but it was something equally ridiculous.
Yeah. And I just feel like all of these groups they're letting us down.
If everything is important, nothing is important. If everything is breaking news, then nothing is breaking news. It's so that we can't. They're distracting us with the nonsense so that we miss all the bad shit that's actually happening behind the scenes. Because I mean, they always hit the hot buttons.
Yeah,
there's always little hot buttons. It's like as soon as we start to question, like, why is the government doing this thing? They're like, look what the drag queens are doing over here.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, something shiny. I'll go be mad at that.
Yeah, it's quite easy to be mad at things that people make it out that it's grooming children. It's quite easy to be mad at it, isn't it?
It's the moral panic. Meanwhile, the same Americans who complain about drag queens grooming children are the ones who were doing child beauty pageants, who were taking pictures with their toddlers with guns, who were having their teenage daughter put on wedding dresses and pledge their purity to their fathers.
I've got to tell you some of these comments I got earlier though, honestly. So the videos today I've done are about the polio vaccine, right? So I was talking about RFK Jr.'s comment about the polio vaccine. Right, and then this one person.
Wait, my hand is raised. I have a question.
Yeah.
Why is he talking about I don't know what comments he made. Why is he talking about the polio vaccine?
Well, because
RFK
Jr. he doesn't think vaccines are a good thing. He's pretending he's about vaccine safety, but he's not. He's an anti-vaxxer, and he's been an anti-vaxxer for decades. And since the COVID, he's been relabeling it as vaccine safety, and he thinks vaccines can cause autism. And he says that his reason is that we shouldn't have the polio vaccine is because 80% of polio cases in the world are vaccine administered polio infections that you've had as a side effect of getting the polio vaccine. Then you've caught polio as a side effect. But then people have been saying some random shit. So I'm talking about fucking polio. And somebody said, RFK sued Fauci and the CDC and won. How are you just talking shit? Who has put you up to this? Matt Hancock. And I'm like, what does that have to do with polio?
And why would somebody be putting you up to anything? For your millions of followers who are...
Yeah, my 12,000. And somebody else called me a low-level fascist. And I was like, because the polio vaccine is empirically supported. And then they started saying, you're not an anti-vaxxer if you don't trust the COVID-19 vaccine. Stop equating polio with COVID-19. It's not the same technology. And I was like, I'm not.
You weren't equating it.
The people in the comments are doing that, not me.
Yeah, you weren't equating it. But also, I kind of feel like the majority of people who call other people communists and fascists could not define communism or fascism.
Well, and then I clicked on her profile, and there's Bible verses and loads of Christianity stuff. So I'm like, oh, yeah, fascism. Fucking hell. And then someone else called me a clown, which is quite funny. And somebody was asking, okay, this is the craziest one. So, when you've clicked on a video and it shows you as part of a playlist, okay?
Yes.
It shows you as part of a fucking playlist. And this guy's interested that you casually dropped RFK Jr. into this. Why didn't you tell us what your god Joe Biden means by saying Putin has lost support from Iraq? I was
what does any of that have to do with anything?
Vaccines.
What does that have to do with anything?
So I called him a space cadet. So
and that's the thing that I find with Americans more than anybody else. We have some of them in Canada too, but I think we talked about this before, how people idolize their politicians.
Yeah.
Like they would say, "You're God Biden." It's not. He's the president. That's all he is. That's the job he has. but people just make it their entire personality. I saw this TikTok, this guy was going out. He was going out to like a Trump rally or whatever, and he was talking to people who were like decked out in like waving MAGA flags, MAGA hats, MAGA t-shirts, and he was like shit talk. He's like, all these queers, right, just making it their whole personality, waving flags, and they're like, I know, right?
Yeah.
And they're not even seeing their own.
As they get pulled into this weird cult of personality. Like, this is why this RFK Jr. thing is particularly worrying me, because I've seen people that have been fairly sensible up until now, and they got through the pandemic in one piece. And I'm talking about people like Russell Brand, Brett Weinstein, Heather Haying, and people like that, who are like, they tried their best to be apolitical and not pick a side, and they're all quite liberal people. But since RFK Jr.'s come out of the woodwork, they're saying all this good stuff about him, and I'm like...
But also, Russell Brand has kind of made a pretty distinct change in his politics, it feels like.
No.
Or he's been more vocal about it than ever before.
No, he did start doing his YouTube stuff during the pandemic, and he's very much, he's still liberal and everything, but it's become more anti-establishment. So, because he's anti-globalism, which isn't a bad thing. But what he finds is, in this kind of the same problem I find, is that people are more willing to talk about it are more conservative people. And the traditional, what we'd say is liberals, are currently sucked into a lot of the ideological dogmatism that we're getting in the media and from the politicians. A lot of liberal people get caught up in that. And so the centrists and like the moderate right wing are more happy to talk about things and agree to disagree. And because of that, he's just kind of been shoved onto that conservative side. He's been associated with it, and he's quite explicit. His views are very liberal, and some of the stuff is like super wishy-washy spiritualism and everything, but they're giving him a space to be able to speak, whereas the left wing aren't. And then they're becoming very... There's a huge rise at the moment, particularly in the UK, of left-wing authoritarianism, and that is one of the worst types of authoritarianism, because they're doing it for your benefit, and it's like they're compassionate and they have empathy. We know you
better than you do.
Yeah,
we know better.
And then this is why, like, this is what people just couldn't fucking understand when I was talking about universal basic income, and I was saying that, like, you guys hate our current government, okay? We've had them since 2010. They're all corrupt, dodgy crooks, and you can't stand them. But you want to rely on the government to give you universal basic income every month and rely on them for your basic survival. Why can't you see how that just doesn't work? Because you could get another conservative government and then you're relying on them for your basic needs.
My fear with any relying on the government for anything ever is because as soon as the government changes, policies change along with it. So they can just undo everything that you relied on. So if that's where you're expecting things to come in, then that next government can be like, that was a nice run, but it's over now.
And that's exactly what happened. Because the government before them, they weren't that great. It was Labour, but they were basically left-wing authoritarianism, nanny state. But they had this program called Sure Start Centres, and it's supposed to help kids have a sure start in life. So it meant that the parents could go and earn money and stay above the poverty line, and then there'd be somewhere for their kids to go where they would get an education, and then they'd be able to be fed and all that stuff. It was basically like kindergarten type thing. And now, and then as soon as the government got into power, the Conservatives, they axed all the Sure Start Centres. They basically got rid of them within 2 or 3 years, and then childcare costs skyrocketed, and then working class and lower middle class families were fucked because they had all these kids because they thought they could have these kids because the government were giving the Sure Start Centres.
I mean, that was pretty short-sighted on their part too.
Yeah.
I mean, planning to have children because somebody else is going to pay for them is kind of a bad idea.
Yeah.
There's a subreddit called LeopardsAteMyFace, and it's quite entertaining. So American politicians end up on there a lot. I think it was Lauren Boebert.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she was now talking about like a bridge that collapsed or something else that collapsed, and she's like blaming Biden, but she also voted against an infrastructure bill that would have put money to pay for those things. It's like people forget that other people pay attention to the things that you say.
Yeah,
and they're going to come back and like, and if anywhere is going to happen, it's going to be Twitter and Reddit, where like if you say something on Reddit, people will dig deep into your post and comment history and pull something out from 4 years ago to be like, is this you? Like,
yeah. Cancelled.
Yeah, it is. It was. Maybe I've grown since then because nobody's allowed to do that.
Yeah. It's so fucked up. Like, the internet is a very weird place. Like, I've been trying on my personal, like, random account, like, just getting involved in YouTube comments just to kind of gauge how people interact with it and the kind of things that they comment and how it functions, because it's so different to TikTok, like you were saying in our last episode. And so I've been trying it out, experimenting with it, and people are so fucking hostile. So hostile.
Yeah, it's weird how quickly people go from like, they're like rabid dogs. They go from 0 to 10 in a heartbeat. And I think it's like what we talked about before is that everyone goes into it already assuming and already on the defensive.
Yeah.
It's like when you got that family member who's always like low-key insulting you, and then as soon as you see them, you start to get geared up. So even when they say, how are you? You're like, well, how the fuck should I be? Right? You start, you start to get up. You start to pull a Zool, as we say in this house. But I find YouTube more than anywhere else. Maybe it's because they have more characters they can type in, so they just let it all out. But it's definitely more hostile than it is on TikTok.
Yeah, because I was commenting about a thing about Roseanne Barr, like, because I got suckered into the same thing. Like, I thought it was a serious comment she was making, but apparently she was saying it like sarcastically, having a dig at those kind of people. So I made a comment about that in some random video, and then somebody basically put me right, but in a really hostile way. So like I went and watched it, I was like, oh no, I am the dickhead. So I was like, yeah, I get it, but it's still in bad taste what she said. And then got into like a bit of a conversation about you know, how good comedians can push the envelope without being so brash and all that stuff. And there's somebody who had accused, like I had some laughing faces, and there's someone who's accusing me of being triggered and called me a snowflake for being so triggered.
Everybody's playing really fast and loose with the word triggered, and we're like Karen. Like if you if a woman even just like gives somebody a dirty look that no one else sees, she's a Karen. If you just question somebody about anything, you're clearly triggered. It's like I've never been triggered in my life. Like
it's not triggered.
I'm not triggered, and like it's pretty arrogant to assume that that person would say something that would trigger somebody else. Who the fuck are you? I don't care about.
Yeah, I just said to him, like, do people typically laugh when they're triggered?
But, and like you made the comment about good comedians can push the envelope and make that. The problem is that Roseanne Barr, that's never been her style of comedy. No. So I could see how quickly people could think she was serious because she's also said a lot of batshit crazy things. Exactly. But then her type of comedy has always been that like domestic goddess around the house, relationships type thing. So when she talks about something like that, you forget that she's a comedian because she doesn't have that.
And it wasn't even clever. It was just a really inappropriate, I just think, bad taste comparison to make. You didn't have to go there. It was just
fruit that she wanted to draw a reaction from. Like, I mean, we're both fangirling over Anthony Jeselnik, but he does dark comedy in the right way. And it's all his comedy. So you know whatever's coming out of his mouth is going to be meant to push the envelope and meant to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah, and usually if somebody's saying something sarcastically, I don't think she has quite a good grasp of sarcasm or irony. So like her whole delivery was off, like it was too real.
Yeah, and her delivery, and again, because it's not the type, because you don't know anymore, because she said some really wacky off-base things that when you hear it, you're kind of like, well,
and Theo's reaction. Theo's reaction as well, to juxtapose it, usually the other person that they're talking with would give you some signal that it's a joke or sarcasm, but he just sat there meekly, like, just going, yeah.
I wonder if he wasn't sure either.
Yeah, I don't think he was. I don't think he was following the conversation. Because I've watched quite a few of Theo's interviews with people, and he's usually a lot more switched on than that.
Interesting. I wonder what was going on with him that day. I said thoughts and prayers to Theo.
Yeah. Poor Theo. But yeah, so I don't know. Roseanne Barr's just a weirdo, isn't she? I think.
You know what? I loved the original iteration of the Roseanne show.
Mm.
I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. And even like the first when they brought it back until she went off the rails and got the show or got herself kicked off the show, I was still enjoying it. I still thought it was clever and it was funny, but it's her though. That's always been a bit of a wackadoodle. And I think it kind of started when she sang the American anthem at a baseball game. And like, I think she like grabbed her crotch and spit and she did. It was a long time ago. I think that was like one of the first things she did that people were like, oh shit, this one's someone to watch out. Yeah, so we need to watch out for her. I'm finishing up a book trilogy that I think is probably one of my favorite book trilogies ever. And it's bizarre because it's totally not this. So it's Frederick Bachman, who wrote A Man Called Ove and Anxious People. They've actually just recently made a movie with Tom Hanks, but they changed Ove to a different name because I guess Ove wasn't American enough. So the Swedish writer. I love the books, love the depth of characters that he develops, but this one is like this trilogy of the small town, and it's all about hockey. Like when I first started reading the book and it was so hockey driven, I was like, fuck's sake. I don't want to read a hockey book, but I liked the author enough to like, I'm going to go with it. And I'm halfway through the final book of the trilogy, and I really don't want it to end. Like the characters that he is able to develop, the breadth and depth of the relationships, and it's like, it feels like I've watched a 10-season drama in these 3 books, because it is like, it's love and passion and sport and small town teenage drama and adult drama and revenge and relationship. It is fucking everything. And its third one is building into something that like the tension that it's been building is like, it's stressing me out. Like I just need it to happen. So I know, but it is so good. It's such a good trilogy. It's Beartown, Us Against Them. And the last one is called Winners. Frederick Bachman. You need to read it. Listen to it, because the audiobook narrator is phenomenal.
What kind of books are there? Is it just like a story about people, just like a drama? Yeah.
It's just about people in this. It's the people in this town, how their actions are motivated by hockey. They have this hate for their rival town, and like how that kind of spills over into everyday life, and how it's kind of, it's this constant simmering of, I don't know, disquiet and discontent and trying to be better, and the pressure that parents put on their kids to succeed in hockey, because that's what this whole town is about. The pressure these kids put on themselves, how things kind of bubble over. The first book is about this young girl who gets raped at a party by the star hockey player. And people are trying to kind of brush it under the rug a little bit because he's the star and we don't want to damage his, even though she's the daughter of the hockey coach and the general manager who and this kid has kind of thought the guy who assaulted her because everyone gives him everything because he's the star, he's going to be the next one to come out of this town. He's kind of been given this, he feels like he's got this like carte blanche and this free pass to do whatever he wants. So it's it starts there, and that's what the first book is about. And then like he just builds this tension to things that happen in such a way. This third one starts with a storm, and like you feel like you're part of you're in that storm. The writing and the way he's able to develop characters, he is like in my top 5 favorite authors. And usually I'm a sucker for a psychological thriller. That is not what this is at all. And I am like going to be so sad when this book is over.
What's the chapter construction and point of view? Does it follow like a different chapter per person, or is it just following like a narrative?
It just follows the narrative. In this one, it sometimes goes back and forth between the 2 towns. So like you'll follow the characters in the different towns. So because there's Beartown and there's Hit. And so you'll go back and forth between what's happening in each and how these towns collide.
Oh, cool. See, when I say to people that like I don't like fiction about psychology because it always misses something or over eggs something and doesn't get it right. The kind of psychology that I like is stuff like that, where it's just somebody writing about people and then they understand humanity so well and just bring it out in the story.
It is crazy how well this author is able to develop all of the characters, from like a 5-year-old girl who wants to get into hockey to a 60-year-old man who is trying to better the town, but doing it in a nefarious way with nefarious and felonious intent. Like, he's just, the way he's able to, he must be a shapeshifter, because he's able to put himself into everybody's different points of views and write the characters in a way that's so authentic. Like, I was telling you about that book Bone Shaker that I read, which is kind of like a steampunk Civil War era zombie movie, which on its face sounds like it would be amazing, but the author never develops the characters in a way that you actually give a shit about them. So I listened to the entire book and I was like, meh. The story could have been amazing, but the characters were just so shallow. All the characters in these books, like, I'm fully invested in their lives. Like, I know that Amit is a fictional character, but I really want him to make it to the NHL. Like,
yeah.
Like, it's just, I don't know. I'm actually like gearing up to make TikToks about it. That would probably be, cut this out, probably be the ad for this episode. But
I take it he's not the rapist then.
No. He is not. The writing is just, it's clever. This book is, the audiobook is 21 hours. It's a long book. Like, it's a big book, but it never lags. It never gets boring. It never, like, I never want to skip through chapters, because every piece of it is, it's so good.
I'm not saying you need to own as many pairs of glasses as I do, but I'm also not saying you need to own as many pairs of glasses as I do. Look at the selection of these frames. They are amazing. Head over to Zlul at the end of this episode, not now. Head over to Zlul. There is a link and promo code in the description of this video. Promo code GVizzle15 will save you 11% on orders over $50 and 15% on orders over $100. And just come on. Look how beautiful these frames are. I just can't get enough of them. Zlul.com.
Yeah, because I think it's something the Scandinavians are pretty good at, is those character pieces, but something from your side of the pond that I really liked is Freedom by Jonathan Franzen.
I don't think I've read that one.
Yeah, it says on the blurb here that this is the story of the Berglunds, their son Joey, their daughter Jessica, and their friend Richard Katz. It is about how we use and abuse our freedom, about the beginning and ending of love, teenage lust, the unexpectedness of adult life, why we compete with our friends and how we portray those closest to us, and why things almost never work out as they should. It is a story about the human heart and what it leads us to do to ourselves and each other.
Interesting. That sounds good. Another one that does a really good job of developing characters is Wally Lamb.
I haven't heard that name.
A friend of mine recommended it to me, and I can't remember the name of one of his books, but so the book kind of follows him and his wife and their relationship over the span of some years. But his wife was one of the teachers at Columbine. It's a fictional story, but she's one of the teachers at Columbine. And it's kind of like starts with how that affects her life, how it affects her mental health afterwards, and how it affects their relationship. So it's kind of one of those books that spans a lot of years, but he really digs deep into the characters. Okay. Lionel Schreiber does the same. She's written, we need to talk about Kevin.
Yeah.
And there's a couple that I've read recently. There was, I think I actually brought her up before. There was one that I was reading or listening to a while ago about just a guy in his 60s who decides to run a triathlon.
Yeah.
And his wife is like, oh God, what else? But you're right about like because Jonas Jonasson wrote The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out the Window and Disappeared, which is amazing. And The Girl Who Saved the King of Sweden, also amazing. And I love listening to Swedish authors more than reading because, only because I'll get, like, when I read the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series, I got really hung up on, like, how do I pronounce that? How do I pronounce that town? How do I pronounce that name? And when I'm listening to it, I don't have to think about it. It just flows.
It just happens to you.
It just happens. And I'm like, oh, that's what it is. Like with this series, one of the towns is named Hed. That's how it's pronounced, but it's spelled head. And I would have been saying the entire time.
No, I really like Hugh Nesbo. It's spelled Joe Nesbo, but it sounds a bit weird. Joe Nesbo, but I think you pronounce it Hugh Nesbo. he does sort of Scandi crime thriller books.
I like those.
Yeah, he's really good. The Red Breast, I think, was the first one I read for that. Because like they got translated out of order. So the first one translated, I think, is The Red Breast. And that's a good place to start.
I think there's another author. Is it Tana French? I don't know. I can't remember if she's Swedish or not. But yeah, no, they excellent books. I like Irvin Welsh, but I also like to listen to his more because he writes with the Scottish accent. Like,
yeah.
You almost have to read it in your head with a Scottish accent.
Yeah. There's there was a book, The Secret Diary. No, I can't remember what it's called. The Diary of Ned Kelly. But Ned Kelly wasn't literate, basically, and they write it in the style as if he was writing the diary.
That would be a challenge.
Yeah.
There's a book, I think it's, I forget, I can't remember if it's, I think it's Filth, whatever it is. It's an Irvin Welsh book where some of the chapters are written by his tapeworm.
Oh yeah, you told us that a few episodes ago.
I would actually want to like download the audiobook because I want to see how they pull that off.
Yeah.
Because the pages, it looks like there's text on either side that gets cut off by this like bloop, 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 which is the tapeworm. So you can see the beginning and ends of words. So you're like, what were you going
to say? Damn you, tapeworm. Bloody tapey. It was the last place we lived in that cottage. And we used to have like local cats would just come and hang out with us. Anyway, one day she had to stop them from fighting each other. And one of them bit right on the webbing of her hand, but inwards. Like, yeah. So it was like a hole just right in the webbing. Yeah.
My brother, he told me the story. I don't know if he witnessed it or he just heard it. I think he read an article about it where this older woman was trying to break up a dog fight, but she wasn't physically capable of pulling the dogs apart. So she stuck her finger in one of the dog's assholes. Yeah. That was enough for the dog to be like, whoop.
Yeah, there was a guy that did that in the rugby union in Australia. He got banned from playing for life because he tackled guys and then he'd go bump his two fingers up their asshole and would make them drop the ball. And then, yeah.
That's why he really did it.
Yeah. And for the listeners, what GVizzle just did is she sniffed her fingers and licked them.
You're welcome for that visual.
In Reddit, Not How Girls Work, Darren said, my wife was always saying she wanted a job, and when I agreed she could get one, she ended up trying to cheat with 3 different guys. Most women don't want to work. They want attention from men. If your lazy wife wants a job all of a sudden, look out. Happening to my friend now.
If you're lazy, if the wife you've been financially abusing wants to get out from your abuse, that's a red flag. Yeah. Like, no longer tolerate your abusive behavior.
Yeah,
bitches.
Why can't you just let me take advantage of her?
I know, just stay home and shut up, bitch.
Yeah, that's what I keep saying. No one listens to me. No, there was
because you're a simp.
It's true. I'm a simp beta cuck. And I saw one the other day. This woman was actually, she misused what's it called? Weaponized incompetence. She made out that her husband was using weaponized incompetence and abusing her. And the whole thing, it was just nothing. There was just nothing there. And it's just because she hates her husband and wants to leave him. So she's telling all of TikTok that her husband's abusing her and like he's weaponizing incompetence.
Just leave him if you want to leave him. You don't have to destroy reputation. You don't have to make him look bad on the internet to your friends and family. Just fucking leave him.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to be the bad guy. That's the thing. She doesn't want. It's like those. Like I knew a couple of girls in high school who, when they wanted to break up with their boyfriends, they didn't know how to do it, so they would just be like super shitty. So their boyfriends would break up with them. And I knew a couple of guys who did the same thing. They wanted to be the dumpy rather than the dumper.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
Feels like she's doing the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because she was like, yeah, well, he never does what I ask him to do. And last night I asked him to wash the bottles up, and all right, he did that. You can see them on the side there, but also. He left the washing up in the sink and the pizza boxes on the side. Why didn't he just clean those up too? And it's like, then this woman did a really good breakdown of it. It was like, well, there's only a plate and a glass in the sink. That's hardly washing up. And
I mean, I do get it, right? Like if you're saying that you're going to clean the kitchen, you clean all.
Oh no, that wasn't it. She was. I'll try and find the clip. Because
I mean, we talked about that one. Like that was one of the.
Mm.
Do you remember that guy who did that? Who stitched me? I guarantee she hates men. I guarantee she has a problem with her husband. All right, she's got daddy issues because it's the full job. You're gonna do if you say you're gonna.
No, it was no.
But if he said he's only gonna do the bottles and he only did the bottles, then he did what he said he was gonna.
Yeah,
do.
no, that's what I'm saying. So,
okay.
So she said, "Can you do the bottles?" That was the specific task, and he did the bottles. And then there was a bunch of other stuff, but the things that he'd left were all perfectly explainable. And like he didn't have loads of stuff. There was 2 pizza boxes folded up on the side, ready to throw out. There was a plate and a glass in the sink, which is kind of like you've done the washing up. Then later on, before you go to bed, you have a snack and you put like the plate and glass in the sink, right?
Okay.
Right. And then on the stove was a pan. One pan, clean, on the stove, right? But what do we usually do? A lot of us who, if we use one pan regularly, we leave it on the stove clean. And it's good to go on the stove. That's basically what he done. And the kitchen was tidy.
Yeah, like my husband, because when I do the cooking, my husband does the cleanup. Yeah. And he'll ask me as he's cleaning up the pot, are you using this one tomorrow? I was like, yep. Yeah. And then he'll just leave it on the stove instead of putting it away. Exactly.
And then she was bitching that the guy did exactly what she wanted.
You know what I think the challenge is that people learn new phrases. They try to apply them to everything. So she heard weaponized incompetence and was like, oh, my husband does that. And she's trying to make that fit into the scenario. It's like this terrible Jennifer Aniston Vince Vaughn movie. Just made me think of it. That I think it's called The Breakup. And the whole movie is about them breaking up. But there's this whole scene where she's trying to get him to do the dishes. And he's like, fine, I'll do the dishes. He's like, no, I want you to want to do the dishes. And he's like, why would I want to do the dishes? I'll do the dishes. And they have this whole fight over her. It's not enough for her that he was going to do the dishes. She wanted him to want to do the dishes. And it's like, you can't have it all those ways. Nobody wants to do the dishes.
No, nobody wants to. It's not fun.
That's why we once didn't buy a house because it didn't have a dishwasher and there was no good place to put it. I was like, we can't live here. I can't live like this. My mom was so anti-dishwasher. She never had one.
Until she used one.
Yeah, like she remodeled her old kitchen and I was like, you should put in a dishwasher. Absolutely not. Her new house has a dishwasher and it took her like a good 6-ish months before she used it at least. And she only agreed to use it because she had the whole family over for dinner. So there was like 8 of us. And we just like, let's just use the dishwasher when we have a family dinner. That way it's not that much work because usually it's just her. So then she did it. And now every time I go over there, she's like, just put it in the dishwasher.
Showing off with the dishwasher.
She's like, oh, that dishwasher is the best. I'm like, girl, I know.
So I found one. I think this might be a student one. So it's literally from somewhere called The Student.
That's a good sign. That's a good tip off.
Dear Agony Aunt : I think I might be losing him. Oh, the melodrama. Students, eh? Anyway, I have less and less one-on-one time with my boyfriend. Are you making notes?
I am now. I almost forgot. That's how the shit goes down. Yeah. Proceed.
Okay. I have less and less one-on-one time with my boyfriend. We mostly hang out with mutual friends, which is great, but I can't help but feel like I'm not special to him. We barely have date nights and I don't want to push him. It feels wrong. I feel so alone in this because everyone only sees how great he is. Whenever I see him talking to anyone else, I get insecure thinking he tells them things he never tells me. I think I may be losing him or that he is no longer interested in being with me. He asked me if I wanted to break up with him when I brought this up, and I said that is the opposite of what I want. I have tried telling him that I no longer feel wanted by him. He said that is simply not true and that he loves me, but I'm left feeling anxious, insecure, and not satisfied. I don't know what to do.
I mean, she says she's articulated it to him, and his response is, do you want to break up? That doesn't feel like somebody who wants to stay in that relationship with her. To me. And like maybe if So she says she doesn't want to push it. So she maybe isn't articulating it as clearly as she thinks she's articulating it. There's no more date nights, blah, 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 blah. But she hasn't said what she is doing to, like, is she inviting him out on date nights, or is she expecting him to know that she wants to go on date nights? Because she's also part of this relationship. So she's got to articulate what she wants to get out of it. And she can't keep relying on him to make all the romantic gestures or make all the date night plans. She's got to do the same thing. If she's doing that and he's like, no, let's hang out with friends, then yes, that's a problem. But it sounds like her insecurities go deeper than them just not hanging out as much as they used to, because she thinks he's sharing things with other people that he's not sharing with her, which is a bit of a red flag. Like, that's a concern. Why is she thinking that? Where is that coming from? And then when she brought up these issues, do you want to break up? I don't know. Like, if my husband came to me and said, I'm having these concerns, I wouldn't be like, do you want a divorce?
But I think I can kind of see why that would happen if they're student age, is because people who aren't very good at communicating, I know if I think back onto my pseudo relationships back then, it was always passive aggressive and evasive. And like, if a girl was saying stuff like that, like, oh, I just feel like we don't spend much time together, and I just feel like you don't really want to hang out with me anymore. Like, more often than not, the girl's trying to break up with me.
But also, like, you make a good point. I forgot that they're students and they're young. They may be approaching this relationship with a very different mindset. Like, they're always hanging out with mutual friends. Like, does he consider her his girlfriend, or is she just a friend with benefits? Is she more emotionally invested than he is? How did they come together? Maybe she's not articulating it as effectively.
I'd like to know how long.
Maybe he's just kind of like over her insecurity and doesn't want to be the bad guy, because if every time he's talking to somebody, if they're always hanging out with mutual friends, and every time they hang out with mutual friends, she gets insecure, and that's going to come out in her communication with him.
Yeah.
And I mean, confidence is quite a turn on. Insecurity is quite a turn off. So
especially at that age.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think she just needs to articulate herself better with him.
Yeah. And I'd like to know how long they've been together as well, to be honest, because what she describes in that first half is like a normal relationship. Once you've been together with somebody for a while, you start to slip into like a normal routine. Like, you do go out on less date nights. I mean, this is something where I think where the age is related to it, because at that age, everything is always butterflies and fun and endorphins. You don't really tend to get to the point where it goes from special to everyday life. And this might be the first time that's happened for her.
And it's interesting that you're saying that, because I actually saw a post on Reddit, and it was a woman who her and her husband, they've been married for 3 years, and so he works, she doesn't work. And she said that lately she started to feel as though the honeymoon period is over, because he's not making her feel as special as he used to. And when she's asked him about it, he's like, I'm really stressed out with work. And she's like, I don't think that's it. What am I supposed to do? And the subreddit that I was in is one that I don't want to say troll, but I only go in there because to find content for the podcast, if I'm being honest. But like, all the people in there were trying to give her tips on how to bring this, not how to bring the spark back, but nobody in the comments was like, you need to understand that if your husband says he's stressed out, he's probably just stressed out. This probably has nothing to do with you and everything to do with what he's articulating. So get your head out of your ass and stop making everything about you, and ask how you can support your partner. What can you do? What's going on? Instead of like, oh, he's busy at work. That can't be true. He's got to be ignoring me. And this kind of feels like this young woman will grow into that woman if she's not careful.
Yeah, totally.
Because you're right. At some point, once you develop that, and I think I remember my niece kind of going through the same thing of like, we're not hanging out as much as we used to. It's like, well, yeah, because you develop patterns and routines, and you get more comfortable, and the newness of everything starts to wear off. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad place in your relationship. It just means that your relationship is evolving and developing into its next. It's kind of like caterpillar to butterfly, right? You're in this whole chrysalis now, where you're developing the standards of your relationship. It's not realistic to always be joined at the hip and not to be with somebody else. You need to have those outside interests and those outside time. But maybe this young woman just always wants to be the apple in his eye, when that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, it's impossible. If somebody is like, if somebody's reciprocating what she thinks that she's looking for, if somebody reciprocates that, that would actually be a red flag about the guy.
It's kind of the basis of some movies, right? Like
Yeah.
if you look at like Natural Born Killers, they have that type of relationship.
Yeah.
There was also that it was based on a true story. Kate Winslet and Rose, I can't remember her last name. I think the movie was called Heavenly Creatures, and it was these two girls who developed this friendship that was so intense. When their parents tried to keep them apart, they killed their parents.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's based on a true story, and then like the ultimate of ultimate consequences was that they were put in separate prisons. So,
So I think it's a codependency.
It is. It's a codependency. It's not healthy. And like if he was like, let's cut all of our friends and just be insular with each other, that would be dangerous.
Yeah. And then what you're going to do, just lie there like on the sofa all day, just staring into each other's eyes. You're like, I don't want to do anything.
I love you more. No, I love you more. I would murder him.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that, and I wonder if that's why at that age, something like confidence and stuff like that is so attractive when you're that age, because so many people aren't. Like you're in your early 20s and you're just becoming like mentally, you're just becoming an adult, really. And then I didn't even realize how long that takes, because I think I aged like I was an old man by the time I was 15 with this stuff. And it's just like, well, I think that's one of the reasons why I've always been attracted to women who are older than me, is because they were just further down that road. They had that ability to have their own lives, their own career, and just not rely on me for companionship or entertainment.
And that's what's so shocking now, is that the number of men who don't want that. Like we see all the time, men making these like, oh, if your woman wants to be independent, if she wants to have her own job, if she wants to have her own money, like these guys have just built this whole narrative for themselves that they need to be the provider, that if a woman is able to provide for themselves, then what are they supposed to do? And it's funny because those are the same guys who then ask women, what do you bring to the table? When like,
they don't bring anything themselves.
No, you're bringing a paycheck, and if that's all you have, then that's not going to be enough, because women can do that for themselves.
Yeah. The other thing is, like you're saying about oh God, you said something a little while ago. I think it was something to do with decision making, and that like you know, knowing what your partner needs, and like you can just react, and like you don't have to ask and fuck about. I can't remember what it was. I can't remember what you said, but it's funny because that's one of the things that I like most in a relationship, is when I don't have to have a big discussion about something. Like she can just turn up and just do what's necessary, like for really important crisis stuff. Okay, so Chris from the future here. All right, so this thing I'm about to go into now is because I found a cat that had a collision with a car. It does get a bit distressing, what I'm going to be talking about, so you might want to skip to the next chapter. But the reason why I'm talking about it is because it's about being a man and growing up with emotional problems and trauma, and having to learn how to process my emotions differently. And, you know, it's a really big thing that men are struggling with at the moment, is trying to find good role models and good examples of how to be a man and be a more emotional, and how to process it, particularly if you've had that trauma. So the cat story here is to describe that, use that as a vessel to explain it. So it is worth listening to, but make sure you're in a good headspace, because I do talk about what happened with the cat. It's not my cat. All my 5 cats are happy and okay, and I was able to get a vet to contact the owner, so the owner was aware of what happened to their cat. Anyway, it is a sad story, so be prepared. You know, like, for example, I'm not going to go into details on the podcast because you don't all need to hear me sobbing like a child. But with that cat that got run over the other day, and I was on the phone to my partner because, like, first of all, I thought the cat was just dead. So I was kind of like, I don't know what to do. What do I do with this? I've just seen it on my walk. And she was like, oh, okay. She's about to reply. And then the cat, like, let out a breath. And so it was still alive. I was like, oh, fuck, it's still alive. And I just started crying. And then she just immediately went, I'll be right there. Tell me where you are. and then she's got her in the car straight away and she was there within 10 minutes. So it's like, that's the kind of autonomy that you need in relationships, of just having that confidence in your decision making and what you know your partner needs.
And I think it's also the beauty of relationships that have developed in that way, that when you take on that role, but it's not, those roles are interchangeable. Whereas there's times where your partner is going to have to lift you up, like in this instance. There's going to be the opposite. There's going to be times where she's going to call you and you're going to be the one who's there to lift her up. And that balance of strength and allowing your partner to be strong for you and then be vulnerable with your partner is such an amazing place to get into your relationship, where it's the same. Because I think there's lots of trials and tribulations that have to get to that point. You've got to figure each other out. And those are the early awkward days of relationships where you fight a lot and you disagree and you're figuring each other out. And there's a lot of like conversations about how are we going to create the rules of engagement for our relationship moving forward. But then when you get there, it's just such a comfort to know that there's this person who's got your back and that you've got theirs when they don't. And there's, I think that's one of the challenges that I'm seeing in a lot of these like posts online where people are looking for certain things in a relationship, is that they don't want to break out of that role. They don't want to ever be the vulnerable one, or they don't ever want to be the strong one. You're going to force people into these boxes where there's a lot of strength in being vulnerable, and there's a lot of vulnerability in being the strong one. And the balance that you can have with that partner is just such a, it's, you know, that you got someone who's going to have your back and you don't have to articulate, this is exactly what I need from you, because you know each other well enough to be able to fill that role.
Yeah, it's one of the things that like in relation to this case is that they're, by being insecure and not communicating stuff and tackling it at this stage of the relationship, they're probably gonna wreck this relationship they're in now and lose something that is probably going to end prematurely. B, it's going to screw up their future relationships, because now this is her long-term relationship prototype. This is what she's going to expect now, which is going to make her more anxious, more passive-aggressive in the future. Whereas you need to be a bit more adversarial sometimes, or you need to push the point more and communicate and be combative in a relationship, not literally punching people or whatever. But it was just like, well, I was talking to my partner like later in the evening about it. And I said that when she turned up and then we were like sorting the cat out, we made like a gurney out of this cardboard box so that we could move it. And I could see that she was struggling in the situation too. But both of us just kind of communicated what we need to do to get through the situation, because it was like looky-loos and everything as well. And we had to deal with fucking people. But I can't remember where I was going with that. And it was just that where I was obviously like, if I was like these other fucking red pill guys you see on TikTok, like having to be hyper masculine all the time, worrying about looking vulnerable. Like if I was preoccupied with all of that bullshit, instead of being in the moment and doing what's best for this poor animal that's been hurt and letting myself feel these emotions so I know how to react properly to what's going around me. And me and my partner were more in sync because she could tell we were feeling the same way about it. And because what I've had in the past is that like if somebody else is also upset or reacting emotionally in a stressful situation, my emotions would just turn off, and then I would just,
one of you has to be the strong one. One of you has to suck it up and like, this is what we need to do.
That's what I always used to think. But what happened in this situation I've never had in my life before is that we were both vulnerable and we were both strong. So we did it in a very simpatico way. That like we were both clearly struggling emotionally with what was happening right in front of us, but we both worked together to resolve the situation and think clearly. So what ended up happening is that like the emotional weight of the situation, and as visceral as what was happening going on, we were able to spread that burden between the both of us so that we could both react clearly and think clearly in the situation. Whereas in the past, what would have happened is that like in past relationships, whoever my partner was at the time probably would have broken down and been a bubbling mess in the corner. And then I would have had to be the big, strong man and sort the situation out. And the problem there is it's created a divide between you because you both have experienced something completely different. And then I've just been emotionally void and I haven't engaged with the situation healthily, and that's going to affect my emotional growth and development moving forward.
Because you're going to have to process it eventually, and you're going to have to do that on your own. And then if you don't have a partner you can do that with, it makes it a more challenging situation.
Yes, exactly that.
And it must just be like those red pill guys who always have to have that facade and they're always questioning. It must just be exhausting.
Yeah.
Like, I saw this guy had made a post on Reddit, and he was like, I don't know how to talk to my dad, because him and his dad were walking into or out of a store. And as they were passing, there was another guy coming out or in. They were passing each other. So this kid, he's like 19 or 20. He kind of like, as he's passing the other guy, they make eye contact. And he's like, hey, good morning. And the guy says, good morning. And they walk by. And then his dad is like, no, men don't say good morning to each other. That's gay. You say like, how's it going? What's up? Don't say good morning. And he's like, what the fuck? Like,
that is like, insane.
It's insane. But that the fact that his dad is walking around through his life being so concerned about, it's like guys who say they can't eat bananas in public.
Looks like a blowjob.
Yeah. And like, there are men who are like, no, you rip off the banana and then you eat it. You don't eat popsicles because of that. It's like, are you so fragile?
That's so hilarious.
And you just walk around constantly thinking, people are going to think I'm gay. It must be like the same of like, as a woman walking around at night being worried about that. It must be that
same level.
The same fear.
This is the thing, like, I promise all my podcasts going forward, I'm not going to reference the dead cat, but when I was waiting for my partner to pick me up, and I was just sitting with the cat and I was just stroking it and all that, just trying to give it a bit of peace. And these two young lads came up. They must have been like 12, 11 years old. And they were like, oh my God, is that a cat? They're like, shit, what happened? Did the car hit it? And they were just talking to me about it. And then it wasn't until after that I realized that they were probably lucky it was me that was there and not some blokey bloke, because they looked like, because these young lads, they look up to older men, right? And they base their behavior off them. But because of my demeanor, they reacted more humanely towards what was going on. And they were a lot more open with their emotions rather than like, they were a lot more honest with how they were feeling. Because I was like, "God, you don't really want to look at it, guys. It's really gross." And they were like, "Oh, is it still alive?" And I was saying to them, "Yeah, you can." I said, "Like, don't touch it because it's still alive." And then one of the kids was like, "Oh, mate, I have to go. I can't look at this anymore." And then like he looked like really sad about it. But like when they first approached, they were like doing that, you know, the swagger and like, you know,
hey, what's going on here?
Yeah. So like, if I had been one of those like red pill guys with that attitude and shit, like, oh, it's just a fucking dead cat, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, suck up. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. But like, they saw like a guy who'd clearly like got wet eyes and was clearly fucked up by what was at his feet. Like, and then because I reacted like quite a calm way and I was just talking to them like just calmly and casually, they were able to connect with the situation. And I was just thinking, like, that's probably going to be a more positive experience for them going forward. And I don't think these red pill blokes or these, like, people who are obsessed with masculinity, I don't think they realize what they're setting these young kids up for in the future.
And also the damage that they're doing to themselves, because if they're never allowing themselves to feel sad or to feel these things, then that's doing themselves such a disservice, because they don't know how to handle those emotions. They don't know how to process those emotions, but they also are missing out on a major part of the human experience of having this range of emotions and being able to articulate it, where I think men feel the things, they just don't know that they're feeling them.
And squash them down.
Exactly. And they need to be allowed to feel these things, because it's a very human thing to see an animal in distress and have a difficult reaction to. Like, there's a dog in this book that I had a breakdown almost because but like, it's, if you don't allow yourself to feel those things, I don't know, it feels like such a, if you don't allow yourself to be sad, it's such a sad place to be, because then it's like, if you don't, I don't know what I'm trying to fucking say, but it's like, if you don't feel the sad things, then I don't know that you can appreciate
good things
when things are really good, because you're just always neutral, and neutral is such a terrible place to always be. Like, you need to feel the things, whether they're good or bad. You need to feel those things.
It's true, because I've had a lot of, like, it's taken me a lot of years to be of work, to be able to be in a situation where I can openly express and even feel those emotions that I felt that day, and to cry in front of my partner about it and stuff, and send you a voicemail about it and things that like 10 years ago, like I saw a dog get run over about 12 years ago by a bus, just obliterated it. It was awful. The memory horrifies me now, but back then I didn't think anything of it because I just couldn't process it, and my brain just switched off to it because I didn't know how to react to it. I'd had no prototypes. I didn't have any experience, even though I've been through some really bad things. But my defense mechanism was just to shut it down.
Eventually, all those things you shut down always come back at some point.
Which is why.
And I think that's where a lot of men get into, sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I think, no, you made a good point. Like, I think that's why I reacted in such a major way. That one thing is that I'm very close to cats because they're the only creature that I've, on a general level, understand on the planet. I understand individual humans, but humanity as a whole confuses me. And cats are the only thing that I've been able to instantly make friends with and understand, no matter the cat. And also I have 5 of my own. It's like, you know, people when they have kids, they see kid stuff and then it affects them.
Yeah, and it's your family.
Yeah.
But I think there's those, it's like those guys who keep pushing things down. Eventually when they do, they're explosive. Instead of just letting things out, it's like the steam engines. Instead of letting out a little bit of steam at a time, it just explodes because they've just, at some point, it overwhelms you that all these things that you've held on to and squashed down, they don't disappear. They just keep building and building and building. Like a cliche, the straw that broke the camel's back, and then it's just, you're a mess. You're a mess, or you're dangerous because of all these things that have come out.
Exactly. And then I think and to support your thesis there, that the next day in the shower I blubbed a bit when I've had difficulty getting the visuals of the day out of my head, but they don't distress me like they would have done in the past. Like now it's like it's something that's happened to me and I felt really awful on the day and the day after, but I feel fine now. Like I feel sad when I think about it, but not distraught, not fucked up. Like I thought it was because of how strongly I felt on the day, I thought it was going to fuck me up. But actually, I feel fine now because I've been through it.
And you sat in it. You let yourself feel it and work through it and think about it and process it. Whereas if you don't do that, it just festers. Yeah.
And then that's what I feel that it's like with this lass with her problem with her partner. I think all of this is entirely related to that.
And if she doesn't learn how to advocate for herself, if she doesn't learn how to function in the relationship, like you said, it's going to form her relationships moving forward, as it is for this guy.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't know potentially what is going on in her head. He's just going to see the end result of that when she freaks out and he has this, jealous rage, and he's gonna like, what the fuck? And then and then forever, she's not going to be the girlfriend who was insecure and had issues and didn't articulate them. She's forever going to be my crazy ex-girlfriend because they're not learning how to communicate. And if they don't do it now, it's going to be so much harder for them to do it later.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's going to color all their future experiences with that one bad memory. And he's probably, like, one of the ways it could go is he's going to think that, like, he's going to be walking on eggshells with all his future girlfriends in case they explode on him. When in reality, for months, they've been feeling insecure and like he's been unconsciously pushing them away and not realizing he's doing it.
What did the agony aunt say?
Oh, it was really long. It's like, I'll put a link in the description because it's quite hard.
If it's long, it's probably a good one.
Yeah, I'll read the start and the end. So it often happens that people in relationships talk in different languages to each other. I don't think this is a particularly bad thing. It actually helps explain certain insecurities and reactions. It sounds like you are asking to be seen, heard, felt, and your boyfriend reinstating that he loves you, though it may be meant as a reassurance, probably feels like a casual dismissal of this intense anxiety you are feeling. I willfully wish for you to have the courage of your convictions to see this through. It's not easy, but an open discussion where you address it all with good intentions and listen with empathy will likely present you with options, easy and difficult ones. I hope you take on the one that feels the most suitable, sustainable and supportive for your sense of peace, and the option that allows you to feel content and doubt-free in the long run. And
Lovely.
there's a lot more in the middle of that too.
But that is solid advice. Thank goodness they didn't write to Deirdre.
Yeah, right. And that was just something called The Student. So I think it's like an Edinburgh University thing, I think.
I wish high schools would teach, or even younger, just like a life skills class. So not only just, here's how you do taxes, and here's how you do a job interview. Here's how you make small talk with people. Here's how you work through emotions and process emotions. Like, we're trying to teach these children to be adults. And if they don't have good role models at home, which not everybody does,
exactly,
then that, the system that you're putting them into for 8-10 hours a day, give them an hour a day to learn how to just be fully functioning, healthy adults. Because not everyone's going to want to go to therapy later or have the option for it, because that shit's not cheap, right? That's just not cheap. Like, so you don't let kids leave knowing how to, read and write, all that stuff, but also learn how to process emotions and function in the real world.
And on that bombshell, enjoy the rest of your day, fuck nuts.
Fuck face. Oh, almost made.
Got it wrong. Got it wrong.
I really am a fuck nuts. Damn it.